Good morning, vinyl community. VC Mazzy here. This is just a Saturday morning cartoon show without the cartoons. Remember when you were a kid? Of course, maybe some of you don't because it's a different generational thing, but the big thing Saturday morning was cartoons. But on the cartoons, all we had was three networks and maybe one or two UHF stations, independent stations that ran reruns and some local flair. But the cartoons, anyway, I'm just doing something a little different for me. I see a lot of you do this, but I'm just going to share some records that I pulled. There's no rhyme or reason for these. It's not one of my thematic shows, but some things I just really like, an artist I like, and some of them are slightly different than the norm that I've been showing, or some people have been showing, but we'll see how it goes. Okay? And these are all artists that you know of a lot of these, and you may not know the specific albums, but okay, enough of the preamble. Harry Belafonte, these two especially. Now I could throw in the Live at the Carnegie Hall album in the early 60s or late 50s, whenever it was, but Calypso, obviously with Deo, you know that. A lot of the younger generation, and not even the younger generation now, middle-aged generation, probably got introduced to Harry Belafonte because of Beetlejuice. Beetlejuice. But this is a beautiful album too. Highly recommended. Singing the Blues from 1958. Really good. Beautiful cover. But all of his records of this period, RCA records, highly recommended. I think I'm leaning up here too much, so I think I'm going to come down one shelf if possible for the camera angle here. Is that better? Yeah. If that'll stay. I'll probably fall flat there. Oh, much better, much better. Now I can see you. Hi, Jimmy, and Sally, and Joe, and Miles, and Anton. Welcome to Saturday Morning with Mazzy. You all know Tim Buckley. Most people are into his folky, moody, ethereal work, but this is one of my favorites, Greetings from LA, because side one of this is just a real move with you, rockin', funky white guy music. The entire side, Move With Me, Get on Top, and Sweet Surrender. 3 songs on side one that just have the most incredible, intense, funky bass. But if you skip this one, don't. You should get this one. It had the smoggy postcard. Those of you who grew up, kind of my generation, knows how LA used to be the smog capital of America. And that's exactly how it looked throughout the late 60s and early 70s. Doesn't look like that anymore, even with all the traffic and all the cars. But I love going down to LA. I go there 3-4 times a year. And but highly recommended record. This came out in 1972, and very, very funky and wonderful. And what a voice! You know Tim Buckley's voice. You all know T-Bone Burnett. This is an EP that he put out. T-Bone Burnett, originally, I discovered him from the Alpha Band. And not only the Alpha Band, but he was on the Bob Dylan's Rolling Thunder tour as sort of a musical arranger and guitar singer. And then probably most of you know him as a producer who produced and pulled the musicians together for Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? And a bunch of other soundtracks. So Grammy Award winning, one of the tallest men in alt country, fusion Americana, great musician, great arranger. He actually did the Beatle arrangements that were in the movie Across the Universe, which are really, if you listen to that music, I think that's a great record. I mean, and a great film. Usually Beatle cover stuff, you know, it's hit or miss, but That's one that you should check out because all the arrangements are the actors and the singers in that, but T-Bone Burnett pulled the musicians together. And to do Beatles songs slightly different is really wonderful. But T-Bone Burnett, I like this. I've just pulled this EP. I have all his records, but this EP in particular, there's a really tough version of Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend. Let's Rock Again. Again, I'm not going to play it right now, but check it out. Google T-Bone Burnett, Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend. You know, the song Marilyn Monroe made famous. And not to, going with staying with the family, even though they're not married anymore. Sam Phillips is one of my favorites. Her first album on Virgin, Indescribable Wow. Gorgeous record. T-Bone Burnett produced all those, but this is one of my favorites too. Martinis and Bikinis. This is from the late 80s, early 90s, I believe. God, what a great record. She's got a wonderful voice. Actually, she started out as a Christian singer, but then I'm not sure all the timing. And actually, I think T-Bone Burnett was also one of the Christian musicians too, but they're no longer married. But there's a whole series of records for Virgin that she put out that T-Bone produced. Great cover packaging, great cover photograph by a Texas photographer by the name of Jeff Kern, who was one of my favorites. And interesting enough, here's a little trivia. I think I said it in one of my other videos, but maybe probably those of you watching here may not have seen that. Because of this photograph, the director of the third Die Hard movie, that's the Die Hard Bruce Willis movie with Samuel Jackson. Well, the directors had this album, saw this photograph, and hired Sam Phillips to be the sidekick in a way. I don't know if sidekick's the right word, but for the villain played by Jeremy Irons. She hardly said a word, but she had that sort of Eastern European face, he thought. So, Die Hard 3, but this record, she's got like a little Beatle-esque sound, if you can think about that. Strawberry Road, very Beatle-like, and a lot of the jangly guitars and production, but again, really thick, cool rock, pop, psych pop, if that's a reality that I'm thinking about. But this, out of all of her records, I'd say go here. You won't regret it, I don't think. A record you may know about, the very first J.J. Cale record. Love J.J. Cale. I think if you don't have any J.J. Cale, yeah, sure, you can go for a greatest hits album or CD or something. But I think naturally his first album is the one to go with. Guitar player, singer, bluesy, folky, swampy, great low-key voice. If you don't know his music, you definitely know some of his songs. Obviously, Eric Clapton probably made him more famous by recording After Midnight and Cocaine, and I think a few other songs. Maybe he did Crazy Mama. I don't know if he did Crazy Mama, but Crazy Mama's on here. After Midnight, the original version, is on here. And a great story about J.J. Cale I heard from, I think one of his booking agents once, or I don't know if his manager or something, that he would tour all the time, and he just would stay there with a cigarette playing guitar on stage. And a lot of times his back or his side would be to the audience. He really wouldn't engage much. But he was asked, what do you do when you're home, when you're off, not touring? And he said, well, I like just be in my house and sit around, play guitar, play music. But one of my favorite things to do is get out, walk down the lane, walk the dirt path to the side of the road where my mailbox is. I love to open the mailbox, reach inside, and pull out those royalty checks. He made more money off Eric Clapton records than he did off his own records. But Naturally by J.J. Cale on the Shelter Records label. Very, very wonderful record. Okay. I'm pulling my copy of Hard Rain Out. This is a promo copy I got when I worked in the record business in the 70s. And I'm pulling this out now for a couple of reasons. First of all, those of you Dylan fans and ongoing completists that are into the bootleg series and all the reissues, well, the 1975-76 concert tours are coming out soon, very soon, probably within the next 2 months, I believe, maybe even less. 14 CDs, complete shows from this tour, the Hard Rain. Again, that T-Bone Burnett was on that. Joan Baez was on part of it. Roger McGuinn, it was on the road, kind of crazy. That's all the photographs you've seen of him with the bandana. This is my promo copy. I remember getting this, and at the time, I mean, I've always been a big Dylan fan. This is where he had white face on, pancake makeup on his face, and I was not a big fan of this record initially. It's a very kind of rock and roll. It's actually almost a punky Dylan record, if you can imagine that. Live punk, screams of songs, songs you know, like Maggie's Farm, Lay Lady Lay, Shelter from the Storm, You're a Big Girl Now, Idiot Wind, but he kind of just belts it. But now I fucking love this record. He just really gets at it. But this is probably a, yeah, wonderful white label promo that I got. Another thing is, this is one of the time there's there's a Scorsese documentary, I don't know if it's coming to Netflix maybe, about this tour and this time period. And I'm not sure if they're going to use footage from the infamous Ronaldo and Clara, which I actually saw in the theater at the time. We had a screening, label screening. I saw the 4-hour version. Yikes. Kind of like 4 hours of not just concert footage. It's so self-indulgent. I had to watch like Shoah or Sorrow and the Pity as a palate cleanser after. And if you don't know what those movies are, look them up. Calexico is a favorite of mine. This is actually just a couple years old. This is the live album in Vienna. In Calexico, if you don't know them, they're sort of southwestern Americana, spaghetti western type soundtrack ish music. But gorgeous package. Gorgeous package. That's kind of what she said. I think I used that too much. Beautiful photography, black and white photography on it. A lot of strings. But their band you should see live if you can. I know they're touring, I think with Iron and Wine. They've done 2 albums with Iron and Wine, but I prefer them. Iron and Wine is great, but a little too mellow sometimes for my taste, depending on the mood I'm in. But Calexico, great stuff. All their records. They do some things that fuse with little hip-hop beats. Not quite on this record, but on some of their early records like Hot Rail, things like that. But well worth checking out. There's a video. You can buy it, rent it, probably watch it on YouTube of them live in Berlin. And it's just fabulous. Staying with the kind of country-esque thing, a guilty pleasure of mine. I shouldn't say guilty pleasure. Why be embarrassed by music, right? I'm old enough. I'm not embarrassed. Tennessee Ernie Ford. Look at that cover. Remember that voice, that baritone voice he had? He had a TV show too, but John Henry was a man. Traditional American work song, and he does it amazing, amazing. In fact, I'm going to double up on that, and as a companion piece, I picked another record that I'm going to go out of order on. Not that I'm in any kind of order anyway. But Jimmy Dean, Big Bad John, huge hit again. Same kind of arrangements in a way. This is a little more gospel-y soul. I love gospel music. I love that sort of Jesus, spiritual, country, traditional stuff. Even for a Jew like me. Just love it. I love it. I love Mahalia Jackson. I think I have one of her records here as well. But both these records, and they sound fabulous. The Columbia stuff here, I mean, you could probably find it. I think this is I have a mono and a stereo version. This is probably, is it a 6i? Maybe not. Maybe it's the red label. Ah, 6i. These records sound fabulous. Even if they don't look great, they usually sound amazing. They just They don't make them like they used to. And look at these inner sleeves, original inner sleeves. But the Jimmy Dean album also has 16 Tons, Smoke, Smoke, Smoke That Cigarette. If you know later bands like the 70s retro bands like Commander Cody and the Lost Planet Airmen, you'll know that they started recording a lot of that stuff. But I recommend to find a good country or gospel, spiritual Tennessee Ernie Ford or a Jimmy Dean. You know, Jimmy Dean sausage guy. Both these people are dead. But didn't Tennessee Ernie Ford host the circus TV shows when I was a kid? Not quite sure. But, you know, Lusty Land. I like me some Lusty Land on a Saturday morning. In the background, I'm playing that Miles Davis remix album that Bill Laswell produced and remixed. And the reason I mentioned Bill Laswell, hopefully I won't get shut down here, but in the 80s, there was a kind of a project band called the Golden Palominos. And here's two of their first two albums. They went on and off, and they were kind of a mix, not a normal, ongoing tight group, but Bill Laswell and a drummer Anton Fig recorded these, and they were sort of a mix of jazzy, funky, turntable, scratching, rock and roll, a little punk edge to it, really kind of big drum sound, but really good records. And they always had a lot of special guest artists like Carla Bly, let's see who else. Sid Straw's on here. Nicky Skopatelias is a guitarist. I can't even pronounce his name, but he was an ongoing member, I think, most of the time. But and then there's T-Bone Burnett is actually on one of these as well. They all come around. But Anton Fear and Bill Laswell. Bill Laswell actually produced a Yoko Ono record and did some stuff with Tony Williams with Yoko Ono. Tony Williams, the jazz drummer. There was also Richard Thompson is on one of these. And I think a couple of guys from Michael Stipe, a couple of guys from REM too. But they were just really cool, that kind of New York, East Village time period. But these are really highly recommended. These are my original copies. I have no idea if they've ever been reissued. My guess is these original ones go for a lot of money now. But, you know, kind of a good time. There was that 80s. There's good and bad about the 80s. I kind of can't stand some of that 80s piano synthesizer, some of the haircut band stuff. There's some I like, but there's a piano sound in the 80s that I just can't stand. But the experimental stuff, East Village stuff, the UK industrial sounds, and getting into the UK industrial sounds, for the name and covers alone, Throbbing Gristle. I actually saw them in San Francisco. Obviously, this is a takeoff on the Martin Denny albums, and especially Exotica. Cosi Van Tutti, the singer. I think that's her real name. These are Rough Trade records on Rough Trade. But there you go. And this is, talk about an album title too. It says Throbbing Gristle's Greatest Hits. It ain't Greatest Hits. It's just an album. Kind of like, I think Phil Oakes had one too, Phil Oakes' Greatest Hits. And of course it was nothing about Greatest Hits at all. But I love the subtitle, Entertainment Through Pain. And this album is dedicated to Martin Denny, by the way. But this, you have to be in the mood. I think, I'm sure he has them if he doesn't, but the Metal Theologian, if you're watching, you'd like these records. I'm sure you know about them. I think I've probably seen you mention them before. You know, you go extremes beyond what I'm into, which I kind of like your stuff. Just, I'm amused by it, even though I'm not going to sit here and vape at 8 in the morning on a Saturday. But 20 Jazz Funk Greats is another. Look at that cover. Again, industrial, ambient, wild stuff. Again, saw them in San Francisco back in the day. God, I'm really going all over the place here. I'm gonna go pop sensibilities. One of the greatest singles ever recorded, schmaltzy or not, is I'm Not in Love by 10cc. Watch the video. There's a half-hour, 45-minute BBC video on the making of that one song by 10cc. They first started out as a band called the Hot Legs, and then they merged into 10cc. But I don't really have to tell you much about them. I think this is probably my favorite album. I mean, their earlier pop stuff with Silver Bullets or Rubber Bullets and Wall Street Shuffle it's just over the top. They've had a great sense of humor. Very, very. I don't want to say underrated because they had a lot of great hits. But the interesting thing about this song, "I'm Not in Love," it came out virtually the same time or slightly before Bohemian Rhapsody, and of course they. Unlike Queen, they didn't have the frontman like Freddie Mercury, so they probably just didn't make it quite in the same vein worldwide. Although they had a lot of big hits, they did fine. But that had the same kind of overdubs, multi-layer harmonies. A great, great, great record. But this record, the sweet One Night in Paris is amazing on here. Life is a Minestrone. I'd say this is my favorite. Yeah, they have greatest hits records. This is on Polygram Records. Apparently they got screwed over because they were, Virgin made a big offer and they were going to go with Virgin Records after their initial few albums. And they all went on vacation and their manager got a last minute deal from Polygram and went with Polygram. I think it was Mercury in the United States at the time. And they wanted to be with Virgin. Virgin probably would have been a better label for them. But the manager just made the decision after they even had like a verbal agreement going with Virgin. Do you want to know that kind of stuff? That's so detail oriented. Some of you are really into just the music. Some of you want to know history and facts and personal stories and, you know, where we came from, where we're going, why is there air? Another one of my favorites, see I'm going back and forth, no rhyme or reason, country, Porter Wagner. You got to have a Porter Wagner record, and if you have a if you only want one Porter Wagner, that's a mouthful, it's a tongue twister. You want this one. The Cold, Hard Facts of Life. In fact, I don't want to be a spoiler, but find that song, Cold, Hard Facts of Life, now on YouTube and listen to it. It's such a great fucking story. Talk about down and out. Look at that cover. You know, walking in on your wife with another man. They're sitting there drinking. I mean, his albums are all about down and out, being the town rummy, the town drunk. Porter Wagner. And then, you know, another claim to fame with him, he had a TV show, and he sort of discovered and made Dolly Parton famous. In fact, there's a series of Porter Wagner Dolly Parton records before she kind of went on her own and became huge, literally. Great stuff. Great stuff. Oh, I mentioned spiritual and gospel music. You got to have a Mahalia Jackson record. This Jewish likes the Jesus music. You know, I ain't born again. I'm not a Jew for Jesus. I'm sorry if I offend any of you with the religious other things, but remember, the Jews invented Jesus. And as Kinky Friedman once sang, they ain't making Jews like Jesus anymore. But Mahalia Jackson, the voice in gospel music. You know, you can get a greatest hit CD even, but I'm not saying this is necessarily the one to go to, but look at that cover. I mean, talk about the ultimate gospel album cover. Oh, God, I love this stuff. Gospel. Hallelujah, Jesus. Columbia Records, music. You know, not far off of that, one of my favorite artists is Delaney and Bonnie. And the word is Delaney Bramlett was a fucking cocksucking asshole. And he just, however, him and Bonnie made beautiful music together and with others. Eric Clapton went on the road with them. Delaney and Bonnie and Friends, that live album is an incredible live album. There's a Rhino expanded, a Rhino limited edition series. I think you can get the smaller version. I have the CD box that's actually square. It looks like a road case that has all the shows. But just the Eric Clapton on the road, or the Bonnie and Delaney on the road and Friends album, is incredible. Jim Gordon on drums, one of the greatest. Probably Jim Gordon is the greatest rock drummer who ever killed his mother. It's another story, tragedy, obviously, but an incredible drummer. But Motel Shot, this is my favorite by far Delaney and Bonnie record, and it has sort of the feel and the illusion that was recorded in motel rooms. You know, being on the road, going back to the motel room, and the musicians are, you know, getting high and drinking and, you know, just playing and jam, and acoustic guitars hitting on a suitcase for a drum. Joe Cocker's on here. Leon Russell is on here. Graham Parsons is on here. But in actuality, this was engineered, co-produced by Bruce Botnick, who you might know, who produced a lot of all the Doors albums, or engineered them. And it was recorded, I believe, in his living room in L.A. They used a living room in L.A. for a live recording, and everyone just kind of... There's a great story. I don't know if I read it or I heard an interview with Bruce Botnick about that, but great record. There's a reissue of this that came out last couple of years on vinyl and a CD that has the expanded stuff with extra tracks, all the tracks, it's great. I would say, you know, you don't need that, but you need this record. Motel Shot, Delaney and Bonnie. It's just, again, it's got a little bit of that, you know, spiritual, country, southern thing going on, you know, just really rootsy and really good. That's why you can see Clapton was attracted to them. George Harrison was attracted to them. Wonderful stuff. Again, these are in no particular order, and I'm really kind of mixing my genres now, but the Eels. Beautiful Freak was had a sort of a minor MTV hit on the tail end of MTV, or in the late 80s, I guess, with Novocaine for the Soul. I love this guy's voice. Raspy, great voice. He writes extremely wonderful, catchy 3/4 chord songs, almost like the same song over and over, but he takes them in a kind of odd direction. I saw the Eels twice at the Fillmore in San Francisco. I don't have any of his other albums here, but I have all the Eels records. And he probably, you might know him because a lot of his songs, the Eels songs, surprisingly enough, are in a lot of movies, soundtracks. In fact, I think every Shrek movie, pretty much, or most of them, I don't know how many there are, Shrek 18, I don't know, but at least the first several Shrek movies have at least one Eels song. A lot of other soundtracks, I think Disney and Geffen, you know, sold his songs or included his songs in soundtracks, which probably, you know, made more money for him as an artist, which is great. But love him. There's a great kind of offshoot album he did under the name MC Honky, which is turntable mixes, rappy, fusiony, hip hop, rock and roll, kind of a cool record. MC Honky. I don't know if that's ever been on vinyl. If it is, it's probably extremely rare. I'd love to get it, but I have a CD. MC Honky. Fun record. Just tape recording things and little trip hop, hip hop stuff going on. But really, Eels is the project of E. He's also acted in a couple of things, but he's got this, you know, kind of big beard, mixologist, barista type, cliche beard. There you go. And lastly, and I don't know why I even picked this. This has nothing to do with any of the kind of music, but a favorite album of mine is the first album by the Tubes. They were originally, I think, from Texas, called the Beans, I think, and I'm blanking out now, but they all kind of reformed and added people in San Francisco. So they were they were big in San Francisco. And this album is an amazing album, produced by Al Cooper. A lot of people think that the Tubes, you know, they got later on Capitol Records and they had a MTV hit, which is, I think it was Remote Control or something like that, which is, you know, the label pushed them to have a hit single. But this album is amazing. they're almost like an art rock group. I wouldn't call them prog, very pop. A lot of people consider them sort of a gimmick band. They had one of the best live shows. They did a run at Bimbo's 365 Club, which is kind of an old school North Beach, San Francisco club in the 70s. I think I went 2 of the 3 shows. I think they played like 10 days there, maybe even a month. I don't remember. But I saw them several times, and also at the boarding house. And they had a visual show with Pearly Gates and, just great stuff. The songs that you probably heard on the radio, one of their infamous songs, and again, they got a sense of humor with their music, is White Punks on Dope. So White Punks on Dope, Up from the Deep, What Do You Want from Life? But really a great song. Michael Cotton and Prairie Prince, their drummer. You probably know Prairie Prince on a lot of albums. He probably jammed even with the Dead. Oh, Vince Welnick. You know Vince Welnick. Those of you Deadheads, because he was in the last incarnation of the official Grateful Dead until Jerry Garcia died. And he was a keyboard player there. So he joined the Dead and unfortunately committed suicide. I think he had obviously head issues, but also financial issues. And the Dead, being on the road with the Dead for years would have been a dream thing. But then having that cut short, not to condone anything like that, but Prairie Prince and Michael Cotton did all their artwork, and they had a very visual style. Fee Waybill, his alter ego, Quaalude, kind of a heavy metal rockin' thing. So I got this from the label back in the day, which is kind of cool. So I got my Love Fee autographed picture. And in fact, when I managed record stores, there was a small chain called the Record Factory, and we'd have these softball games, and Fee Waybill and a couple of the Tubes used to play softball with us on Sundays. Press kit, age 25, William Edmund Spooner. Oh, they're from Arizona, maybe. That's where they were from. And they're all over. Prairie Prince from Charlotte, North Carolina. Michael Cotton from Kansas City, Missouri. Roger Steen, Pipestone, Minnesota. Rick Anderson, St. Paul, Minnesota. Fee Waybill, Omaha, Nebraska. A really American band. Ree Styles, birthplace unknown. Anyway, the Tubes. But this is a great record. I mean, it holds up. A&M Records, produced by Al Cooper. Great sounding record. It holds up. Catchy. A little proggy, but not much. But amazing guitar work, good synthesizer stuff. Highly recommended. Beautiful cover. So that's sort of a Saturday morning potpourri of music that I'm kind of in the mood for right now. And I just kind of randomly picked from my collection. Thanks. Keep subscribing. Subscribe more. Subscribe 4 times, right? Vote early, vote often. And Mazzy says goodbye, and Mazzy loves you. Take care.